Welcome to the Stickers on the Mic podcast, brought to you by StickerGiant.com, where we talk with our customers about how they started their business, how they're marketing their brand, and how they're growing their company. Without further ado, it's time for the Stickers on the Mic podcast from Sticker Giant. Let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Stickers on the Mic. Andrew with you here. Very excited, as always, to be dialing in one of our wonderful customers today. It's Kris Barnard from Posterity Ciderworks in Mokelumne Hill, California. Kris, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat about business and stickers.
That's right. And your business is, you produce estate and small batch hard cider.
Yeah, correct. We make hyperlocal batches of cider using apples, pears, and quinces within roughly an hour of where we are in Mokelumne Hill.
And really quick, because I know what an apple is, but what is a quince?
Yeah, a quince is part of the same family as apples. They smell lovely, kind of like a pink starburst or a pineapple perhaps, but they taste horrible raw. And so you have to do a special process called bledding and then process them into delicious things. Some people make them into jam, and we use them for cider.
Wow, you just started a lot of technical things there. So what is, let's start there, because you went right into the technical side of making this. What experience do you have doing cider?
Yeah. So we started making cider, my husband and I, about 7 years ago now. We bought a house in the Bay Area, and we were blessed with having a fruit orchard on our property that was at a hobbyist level. There was about 10 apple trees and 3 pear trees on that property. And the first fall, the fruit fell, and we realized that we had to do something with it because there's all this fruit. And so we first started with making applesauce and realized that was way too much applesauce. We would never eat all of that. And so we started trying other things, and that's how we got to cider. And then fast forward about 4 years, we decided, okay, we're going to take this a little more seriously. We really like making cider as a hobby. And so we bought 10 acres in Calaveras County and planted about 2 acres of cider trees in particular. So we have probably about 40 or 50 varieties of tree, and they're from various parts around the world. And then we also take clippings from wild trees that are in our area that thrive in our unique climate here. So that's kind of how we started. And then in the last 2 months, we actually opened our cidery. We have a 2,000 square foot manufacturing space with a bottle shop and a tasting room attached to it.
Fun.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, it sounds like it, especially if you like cider, which the beverage space is kind of one of our focuses right now here. That's kind of why we're talking in a way. And it's very interesting coming up with, like, how do you come up with your flavors and the process, right? Like, so you created a brand, you got a store, you got a workflow, whatever. All those things are now in place. Pretty cool. Like, so it's not easy, right? That's reduced to like a sentence, but like, you're doing operations, your husband is doing like the orcharding and the cider making. You're probably doing it together. It's what the website says anyway. But when you're coming with these like flavors, because there's a lot on the website, right? Like, as they become productized, how has that strategically been for you all?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things. One is, as a small business, we're pretty scrappy. So about a year ago, we were in the newspaper and we were asking for old abandoned homesteads or wild orchards that have kind of been let go to nature out here. If anyone had one, there's a lot of large property parcels out in our area of California that have old homesteads on them. And not necessarily they've been maintained. So there's a lot of people who have fruit trees. They have no idea what they are, but they look like apples or look like pears. And we actually ended up getting about 50 different responses from property owners who said, hey, we've got a weird tree. Will you come check it out? Right. The elements of where those trees are, elevation, soil, if it's watered or not, and the variety of the fruit, those all come into the character of how we make cider. Right. It's different than most commercial cideries that will buy, processed juice, or they're buying apples that are all irrigated and they're all exactly the same fruit. We're hand picking all of this out in the middle of the Sierra foothills. And then after that, making smaller batches. So about 40 gallons is probably a standard batch for us. We make batches up to about 3.5 barrels, which is about 150 gallons. But that's it. We don't make anything bigger than that because we really want to have the fruit and where it's come through in the expression of the bottle of cider that we're making.
Yeah, so it has its own terroir, so to speak, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
And then you bottle them up. Like, this was the Homestead Blend #1 sparkling bittersweet cider, right? And then you sell them online, obviously, and you have a point of purchase now in like brick and mortar, as you said.
Yeah, so we use Shopify as kind of our integrated system for most of our e-commerce and point of sale. And then we use a tool called Vino Shipper, which is more about interstate shipping. There's a lot of legislation and rules about what you can and can't ship between states. Right. And so using a third-party tool that kind of does some of that regulation is how we get to ship to places like Oregon or Wisconsin or New York. They all just have their own rules, and that tool takes care of it for us.
Right. And that's like, and the benefit of that then for you is you have this cider club, right? Where you get people are signing up from, I presume, everywhere. And you were able to serve that audience without maybe them ever setting foot in California.
Correct. Yeah. We have a lot of folks that we've actually met through social media, through just the building of our cidery, who are huge supporters. And when we opened up our cider club, it was really impressive just to see where all these people were coming from. Just shipping cider with our first release to folks in Texas and people in Washington, and then getting back photos of it and just seeing these like beautiful landscapes where they're doing similar kind of homesteading projects of their own. But having our cider in the foreground, it was just like, wow, it's so beautiful.
That's awesome. So, obviously it's been a busy few years, and I'm sure like the last couple have been tough. What made you want to open a brick and mortar at this stage of the game? Yeah.
So it was actually not our first plan. Our first plan was that we were going to sell through like a distributed farmers market wholesale chain. It's very challenging though to find a property that's already coded with the county to do wine production, which is technically what cider falls under. It's very similar.
It's not beer. It's not brewing.
Yes, there's no
it's fermentation. It's fermented different.
Yeah. So we tell people a lot, like if you've ever seen how a winery makes wine, it's like that roughly, but with apples instead. So it's very hard to find a place that's coded for that. And so we spent a lot of time trying to work with the county to use actually a barn on our property. Right next to our orchard, but it just became kind of complicated. We're on a really long dirt road. So there was all this like fire issues, and like it's in a semi-residential zoned area. So that was complicated too. So we bought this place that's about 30 minutes from our actual farm. The actual tasting room is in Mokelumne Hill. And that place had been used as a nano winery production space before, and already had these kind of additional they're not outbuildings. What would I call them? It already had these additional kind of like outlets on the building. So they had a tasting room, and then there was just this kind of like front office space that we've divided into two spaces. So we do have kind of this like shipping, branding, merch, holding area. And then we also have this bottle shop in the front. I think it was pretty ambitious that we decided to have a brick and mortar space right off the jump, but we also have just an incredibly local supportive community. And it seemed kind of unfair to only be offering, within the farmers market period, or finding these like few select retailers that were correct for like our brand fit. So we decided to do that. And like the first day, the amount of people who came was just like, we were blown away. We just really didn't understand how much support there was and how many people were driving past where our business is and seeing the coming soon sign for, months as we were fixing up things and getting, everything bottled and labeled. So it's been really incredible and really fun as we're hitting summer, since our area is a tourist magnet, right?
So I was about to say, like, you're driving, like, that's, you're driving the Sierra foothills up and down, and that's Main Street. You're literally on Main Street, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Like
we're on 2 highway intersections, basically like a block off of that. And that was literally the only place that we could find that was zoned for what we were going to do. So it was complete, like a serendipitous experience that we ended up being where we are. It was like out of desperate need to just get going and like start making cider last fall. Apples are only in season for a chunk of the year. So you really have to hit it when the apples are coming in. And it worked out. So it's been great.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a beautiful spot. So, you have other stuff. You said merch and branding, but I mean, the goal is getting people in there, right? So you have the tasting room reservations, they get a tour. Like what, as you try to drive foot traffic, obviously you said the tourism time, you got a few months, this is your first opening season, right? So we'll see how that goes. But what, like after you get through this, right? Cause you have to survive your first year as in general. What would be after that then? Like from like tours and I don't know, the thing with the trees is very interesting, right? Cause like, it's just such like an exploratory thing in a way too.
Yeah. So right now we're tracking that we're going to sell out of cider before the end of the season. So that means that a lot of our focus is going into this next year of ramping up our production. We're hoping to hit about 3x what we did this last year. And we're going to hire probably 2 or 3 more people to just help with the processing of that. Cider is a very physical, hands-on experience to create, especially how we make it. And so we just need more able bodies, basically, that can like help us, pick fruit, who can help us wash it, press it, get it in the tanks, clean things. It's just a lot. It's like 50% of cider making is like cleaning things. So that's one focus. And the other is expanding our wholesale. So we right now are in 4 locations and we have like maybe 4 or 5 more pending retailers. And we're realizing that we're only open 2 days a week. But these places are open 6, 7, days a week. And so they're pushing our cider at a similar pace to us. So that's just continuing to kind of keep this like momentum going of like, okay, we got to just keep moving our feet and stepping forward and finding more of these really interesting local places that we can pick fruit from.
Interesting. Yeah. And then you are growing some, you said that you have your own orchard too, right?
Yeah. So we bought the property without an orchard on it. It was like a farmette. It's 10 acres. And one day we were just sitting in the car and I looked up and I said to my husband, what if we just plant the orchard here? And he's like, oh, I'm so happy you said that because I've been thinking the same thing. So we started the first year. I was 8 months pregnant with our first son. And we started digging the holes manually. We didn't have a tractor or anything. So we dug 40 holes. And all the trees that we're planting are standard size trees, which is different than most commercial orchards. They plant usually a high density dwarf trees that are mostly for like quicker turnaround, more fruit yield faster, but they kind of putter out and then you have to rip them out and start again at some point.
Oh, wow.
But we're doing standard trees. They take about 5 to 7 years to mature. And it's going to take a good amount of patience because of that. Our own estate blends. Yeah. You want to keep the trees at least in the ground for, like 3-4 years before you let them have fruit produce on them. They'll try to produce fruit earlier than that, but just for establishing a really nice root base, you want to take all of the fruit off until they're about 3-4 years old. So last year, we had maybe like a pound of fruit that we collected because it was the first year that we had trees in the ground for like 3-4 years. And then that will keep going. The trees will produce a lot of fruit once they're of standard size. They'll be about 20 feet tall if they're not trimmed. We'll probably prune them so they're not that tall though, because it's a bit of a a task to pick fruit.
I was about to say, the higher up it gets. Yeah. Like all of a sudden, then you have to invest in equipment, and you're going to be driving the fields you don't want to do, and like with a cherry picker or whatever.
Right.
You introduced a possible injury and all that. So you've learned quite a bit about the science and art of doing this, but like, what did you and your husband, before you bought an orchard or whatever, like what were you doing that would even equip you to run a business of this type and trying to scale and planning around it?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I worked in tech for about 10 years.
Nice.
I did mostly content marketing and then branding with like, I'd always work at startups. So you kind of end up with like 7 or 8 extra hats added on to you, right? Totally. So I had enough knowledge to be annoying probably to contractors, but not enough knowledge to actually like do it all myself and get really in the nitty gritty. And then my husband is just a unique human being. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of different things in the 10 years that we were working in the Bay Area. We worked at a robotics company together at one point.
Oh, nice.
And then he was the manager of Half Moon Bay Brew Co., which is like a big kind of brewery restaurant.
No, I used to have a friend in Half Moon Bay, actually. He moved. Yeah. I know the area. Yeah. That's awesome. So I mean, because especially with the recent history of our show, it's like so many people with these kind of pandemic pivots are coming up with something in the last couple of years. You kind of were outside of that, right, before the pandemic, but obviously the last couple of years have probably caused you to rethink or reshape or try to imagine a different life or future or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And this business was part of that.
Yeah, I think it actually spurred from when my son was born, to be honest. We just really realized that we wanted to spend more quality time as a family, and we wanted to restructure our lives in a way that we would be together instead of having to, put him in daycare or hire a nanny. And it just wasn't really achievable in the Bay Area. Just the cost of living there didn't match with what we could bring in from a one income family kind of stance. Totally. And so that was the catalyst for us to actually make the jump and give this a go, seriously. But I mean, I think the pandemic, if anything, just like slowed down some more of the like public facing aspects of like running this company for us. But luckily there was a lot of other stuff that we had to get in place, like infrastructure wise during this time.
Totally.
A lot of other cider makers that we know, they spent the 2 years just making cider like in a silo, in a vacuum, and then storing it, waiting to bottle it once we kind of came out of this experience. And, they're able to now offer that to other people. But yeah, I think we were like fortunate that we were kind of in the in-between phase of like trying to build the behind the scenes while a lot of the shutdown was happening.
And then build a brand and the thing with the membership and the website. So you're talking about branding and all that platform stuff. So, speaking of marketing and content marketing, we connected on Twitter. I think you shouted out Cider Giant, and I immediately was like, let's go, let's talk. Primarily because of the space too, like whether it's bottling or canning things, like beverages are a huge segment for us, right? I mean, we do a lot of label work, and promotional stickers at the same time for those kinds of brands, whether it's beer or seltzer or cider or kombucha, you name it, right? Juice. It's just such a wild, you're a wild brand, but I mean, like, it's been a frontier-like atmosphere because of so many people, entrepreneurs trying to get into that, so like, it's kind of interesting to see where y'all are at. When it comes to that sort of merching and marketing, that's obviously a little part of what you're doing on your site, right? And in the store, I assume too, right?
Yep.
Nice. Well, let's see here. So I was getting at too, like when I was saying, like getting people into the place, I was wondering, like with tourism too, like are people interested in like seeing the trees? I mean, I guess I'm really fascinated by the trees myself personally.
So it's funny because we, in this kind of pandemic space, we were still running an Airbnb on our farm. Nice. So on our farm, we have this little tiny house that's like right next to the barn, and you can see the orchard. And we're telling people like we have these little baby trees, and they're like, oh, where's the orchard? Like they can't see it because they're like these little sticks that are trying to survive in the summer heat. So I think that there's a lot of people that really love the storytelling behind like these places. Cause a lot of them, it's like an hour out in the cuts on a dirt road that like you would turn around well before you got to this like place. And then, you know, the canyon will like open up and there's this beautiful homestead with all these old trees, and they're making, you know, they have their own beef arrangement that they have with their neighbor, and they grow X, Y, and Z that they sell or they trade. And like, it's just such a fascinating expanse of how you'd think about how people live, because like they live so far away from a grocery store that they've figured out like how to diversify and make their own kind of trade economy within their group. So it's really neat, and to be able to share, you know, like, oh yeah, we went to this place and we met these people and they do all these really interesting things that you wouldn't experience if you live in a city, or if you know, don't have a holding of 100 acres out in the middle of nowhere.
And now I see what you're saying about the story too, because it actually goes into the product. Like this King Grandma bittersweet sparkling cider, whatever. Yep. It's all about this 100-year-old tree stand and mountain ranch. And like, you know, folks, you go to the website, it's posterityciderworks.com. You can read all about all of them, but that then comes into like every single transaction or experience that you have with your audience, which is pretty cool, I think. So, you have plans to grow. You got the people coming in. This summer's going to be big. You're going to run out of, you're going to have that good problem where you won't have anything to sell by August, probably.
Yeah. I mean, we've kind of locked in what we've got for summer, and then we've got some fall releases. We're really trying to like pace some of that. So we just released an elderberry sparkling rosé. We've released Golden Hour, which is a sparkling apple that has a little bit of raspberry in it. It's not a leading like hot pink kind of thing going on, but it's got a really nice nose where you can smell the raspberry, and then it kind of like lingers in that raspberry space, but it's pretty apple forward. And then we've got some smaller stuff that we only ship within California that's in 22 ounces that are more those story-driven varietals. Right.
Yeah. Man, they all look so delicious. So yeah, when you read about drinks, and like, again, the story's fun. And anyway, well, very cool. And, you know, kudos to you all for doing that and making it happen, you know, and thank you for reaching out to us in the way that you did. We love that. You know, it's like the best part is when customers connect with us and we can share that story too. So we really do appreciate that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. We really love working with you guys. You know, it's really nice to be able to find a brand that can do labels, one that can be removed. We recycle our bottles. It's like a huge issue right now is
you can't get the bottles or the cans.
Yeah. You can't. And it's crazy. You know, we're paying, if I'm ordering 2,000 bottles, I'm paying 50% of the cost of what I'm paying is the shipping to get it there. So if I can keep my bottles local and recycle them, that's what I want to do. A lot of labels, if you've ever tried to take a label off something, the adhesive is painful, stuck on everything. But your labels are so easy to peel off of our bottles when we get them back. It makes it a lot easier to reuse them. And then, you know, we're so small batch, and the fact that I can order 125 labels, custom cut, and get them in, you know, 3-4 days and rock it out, like, that's so much easier for us. You know, we looked at a lot of labeling options, a lot of papers, adhesives, shipping time, and just the delays to just get these things is painful when you're a small business owner. So we really appreciate having you guys in our back pocket for when we get our graphics back. We're like, oh, good, put it in. We're good to go.
Let's go. That is amazing. And we'll be following, and, you know, best of luck this summer, of course. And we look forward to checking in maybe next year and seeing how things are going, huh?
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time. It was awesome to chat.
Yes. Have a nice weekend. Enjoy your Memorial Day, especially everybody out there in podcast land. We're hitting up against Memorial Day right now. So find your favorite beverage of whatever it is, but perhaps it would be Posterity Ciderworks. So, you know, you can find them again on posterityciderworks.com. You hit all the socials there. And Kris, of course, we want everyone to sign up for the membership and start getting those bottles sent to them if possible, right? So
yeah, that's how you get the most rare stuff we make.
That's cool. All right, folks, we say every sticker has a story. This one is coming to us from Calaveras County, California. Kris Barnard and Posterity Ciderworks. We'll see you next time.
That wraps up this episode of Stickers on the Mic, brought to you by StickerGiant.com. You can download us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcatcher. Thanks again for listening to Stickers on the Mic. We'll see you next time.